reporting. And as you can see there, she just referred to that statement that was put out on Truth Social. I do want to read it in full, though, so you can have an idea of what President-elect Donald Trump is now saying. He says, quote, January 20th cannot come fast enough. Everybody, even those who initially opposed a victory by President J. Trump and the Trump administration, just want it to happen. It is my obligation to protect the people of our country. But before we begin, we have to think of the inauguration itself. The weather forecast for Washington, D.C. with the wind chill factor could take those temperatures into severe record lows. There is an Arctic blast now sweeping the country. I don't want to see people hurt or injured in any way. It is dangerous conditions for the tens of thousands of law enforcement, first responders, police canines, and even horses, and hundreds of thousands of supporters that will be outside for many hours on the 20th. In any event, if you decide to come, dress warmly. Therefore, I have ordered the inauguration address, in addition to the prayers and other speeches, to be delivered in the United States Capitol Rotunda, as it was used by Ronald Reagan in 1985, also because of the very cold weather. The various dignitaries and guests will be brought into the Capitol. This will be a very beautiful experience for all, especially for the large TV audience. And of course, he says we will open Capital One Arena on Monday for a live viewing of this historic event and host the presidential parade. I will be joining the crowd at Capital One after my swearing in. He ends off that statement saying everyone will be safe, everyone will be happy, and we will together make America great again. And I want to bring into the conversation, as we are previewing this big day, Brian Sobel, political analyst. Brian, thanks so much for being with us here on Live Now on this Friday. Kind of a lot to get to with this. Of course, the major thing being that Trump, as he said there in his Truth Social statement, will be bringing that inauguration inside due to those freezing cold temperatures that are expected there in the nation's capital.
It's going to be exciting either way. A little bit of inaugural history is that in the early years, for example, the first inauguration in Washington, D.C. in 1801 was indoors, and that was Thomas Jefferson, and he also had the first inaugural parade. But by the time of James Monroe and then Andrew Jackson, the inauguration was then moved to the outside. But over the years, depending on weather in Washington, D.C., you have to make a game time decision. And it sounds like on Monday, it's going to be a very, very cold day, as our Rebecca Castor in her piece alluded to. And Donald Trump took the decision to not put a couple 100,000 people through what could be very frigid temperatures.
I also want to point out, because even Trump mentioned it in his statement, that Ronald Reagan's inauguration was held indoors in the same building there because of those cold temperatures. What are your thoughts on that? Obviously, we know that over the years, Trump has sort of likened himself to Ronald Reagan. Many people think that he's very similar. What are your thoughts?
Well, that inauguration in 1985, the second time Ronald Reagan took the oath of office, was held indoors because of what was very similar weather. There were other times in our more recent history where perhaps people would have liked to have seen it move indoors, and I would have viewers think about the inaugural of John F. Kennedy. Very, very cold day. If one goes back and looks at their history, there were a lot of people freezing out there to watch John F. Kennedy be sworn into office. So I think the precedent of either being outside, Christina, in very, very cold weather, or being inside has been set down through our history. And I think Donald Trump actually spoke to something that's important. You know, when you think about the people that have to be out there for so many hours, in addition to the public who wants to see the swearing in, but, you know, the police that have to arrive very, very early, the animals, lots of other people. I think Donald Trump just said, hey, I don't want to put people through this. It'll be a beautiful taking of the oath of office inside the Capitol. And then all of the other events that typically happen during the inaugural cycle, the balls, anything else that goes on, that'll go on because it's indoors. And Donald Trump has said he'll go over to the arena where there will be a lot of people watching a live stream and enjoy time with them. It's less than 1,000 people probably that'll be in the Capitol watching it live, but people all over the nation will be watching it on their television sets.
And I'm glad you brought that up. I do want to put up this tweet from our friend to the show, Cami Mondo. She says that lawmakers and staffers just received notice that because inauguration is inside, the majority of ticketed guests will not be able to attend the ceremonies in person. But offices can distribute tickets in the manner that they think best if they would like to do so. Do you think that on the backside of this, there will be some folks who are upset that maybe initially, because it is held outdoors, it's open to the public, so many more people can attend if they would like, it's going to be just a bit tighter now that it has moved indoors?
I heard a couple of commentators around the nation say, "Hey, aren't we tougher than the weather? Can't we be out there and do this inauguration? And people know what the weather is, and they'll just double up their jackets or whatever." And that's a fair statement, but the person who's being sworn into office has a definite opinion about this, and that is that it is just going to be too cold to be out there for an extended period of time. I mean, when you think about it, Christina, we watch these, as an example, a football game from Green Bay or someplace or wherever, and it's so cold, and you say to yourself, there's somebody sitting out there for 3 hours in that kind of weather. Well, in this case, it's more than 3 hours because the security checkpoints and lines alone will have people out in the cold for several hours, many hours. And I think Donald Trump just decided that wasn't healthy for people.
And ultimately, like you said, wasn't healthy. Mentioned that several times in those statements. All right, also looking ahead to inauguration, one of the other big storylines is coming out of it is who will be there versus who has chosen to step away. So as we know, back in 2020, Donald Trump did not attend President Biden's then inauguration. And it's now come out in the last few days that former First Lady Michelle Obama will not be attending his second inauguration, and neither will Nancy Pelosi, the former Speaker of the House. What are your thoughts on this, and why do you think that this has become such a storyline over the last few days?
Well, I think it's become a storyline because in the American way of things, we set aside our personal grievances for the greater good, and in this case, it's the inauguration of a president. So you would say that's not my person in terms of my politics or anything else, but I respect the presidency. And this is what's lost in the idea of some of these people not coming: is you're not there to celebrate Donald Trump per se, or Joe Biden or whomever, people you may like, may not like. You're there to celebrate the transfer of power to a new president as prescribed in our Constitution and as envisioned by our founders. That's the whole point of this. So people may say, well, I don't want to go and watch that person be put into office. That is akin to me, Christina, to people who say, well, that's not my president. My answer is, yes, it is, because that president is the president of all the people. And you may not care for him or like him all that much, but you cannot deny that they're president of the United States. So I think it's beneath people to not attend, frankly, to not attend because of personal animus.
And I want to also bring up something that seems a bit different from his first inauguration back in 2017. Of course, we know that the Women's March at the time, more than 500,000 people were there in Washington, D.C., making their voices heard to say that they did oppose a Trump presidency. This time around, it's going to be held on Saturday. It's held in together with the People's March this time. They're only expecting about 50,000 people to be there. What are your thoughts on this change in temperature in the last 8 years?
Well, again, I think conditions account for a lot of that. It's going to be miserable conditions to march. The People's March, which is there are branches all over the country where people are going to march, is part of the American fabric, part of the American democracy. If people are not happy with the direction of government, march on, do it peacefully. But at the same time, for the people that are in and around the apparatus of the presidency, senators, members of the House of Representatives, the other departments, and that sort of thing, I believe they ought to be at the inauguration. And if you want to protest, that's good, that's fair. It's the American way.
And another thing that's also been brought up over the last few days is who is going to be performing there at the inauguration as well. We do know that this time around, it hasn't seemed that celebrities who are stepping up to the mic are receiving the same sort of reaction that they received on both sides from 2017. We know that Carrie Underwood has said that she will be performing, a huge name stepping out there as well. Other names have also going to be there as well, including the rap artist Nelly. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I give them credit because I think maybe they're there for Donald Trump, but they're also there for the transfer of power from one president to the next. I saw a comment by Carrie Underwood talking about the fact that it's a great honor to perform at an inauguration or the events surrounding the inauguration. I agree with her. Nelly, same thing, and other people that will be there. We would do well in this country to put aside our personal grievances around things like the inauguration in favor of remembering what a great country this is, and a country that has this ability to hand off power to the next president. And that hit a bump in the road, obviously, 4 years ago. But I think the American public truly believes that this is a time to celebrate. And by the way, the entire world watches this as well. And what they see is people from both sides of the aisle and people who aren't in an aisle all congratulating each other on the successful transfer of power, which has happened so many times in American history.
And Brian, before I let you go, we have to talk about what's to come after the official inauguration. We know that President Trump has promised that he will be making a lot of changes on his first day in office. What do you think that he will be tackling first once he's officially there in the Oval Office?
Well, he is going to issue a series of executive orders. And the issuance of executive orders bypasses Congress. And it's not new to Donald Trump. Barack Obama issued numerous executive orders when he came into office, and Joe Biden did, and a lot of these presidents that come in, and Donald Trump come in, and they have an order of preference on the first day for either turning back things that their predecessor moved forward, or moving quickly on their own agenda. For Donald Trump, I think there will be immigration related executive orders. It could run the gamut of many of the things that Donald Trump talked about in his campaign. But lest people think that this is, when they read about this or hear about this, that this is only Donald Trump. The truth of the matter is that over the last 30 years, presidents have come in and issued a whole lot of executive orders on the first day, many of which don't stand the test of time, but they do it to lay out what their administration is going to look like.
Can we also talk about the elephant in the room? So many folks are upset about this. We've been covering it extensively over the last few hours. TikTok is set to go dark on January 19th, which is Sunday, the day before President-elect Trump gets in office. Biden has already said he's not going to do anything to stop it from going dark or to enforce the ban either way. He said he's going to firmly place this in the hands of the next administration. How soon will the pressure be on for Trump to respond exactly to see what he's going to do with the app? Do you think that people will be asking him about this on his first day in office?
No question. There is the provision which we saw in the run-up to the discussion of the inauguration. If viewers were watching right before we started this discussion, there is a provision for a 90-day extension, essentially, in the legislation that would allow more time for this to be discussed by Congress. I suspect that the discussion around TikTok will continue And in a sense, this was one of Joe Biden's final presents to Donald Trump is, hey, all these people in America on TikTok, Mr. New President, you can figure this one out. And in fact, Donald Trump may already be, and I'm quite sure he is already working on it, as the senator said in the media conference around TikTok. There are suitors for TikTok. We've heard some of those names. I would guess that the minute that they can figure out how to pull this away from the Chinese government, TikTok will become a much more American product and without the influence of the CCP. And I think a lot of people will feel a lot better about it. And frankly, Americans should feel better about it because right now, we don't know what's happening with all the data that TikTok controls. They claim that they don't pass it on to the Chinese government. But I think many people suspect that much of our personal data is taken from sites like TikTok and moved into other realms in the CCP.
And it is interesting, as we also know, that China has also said that they'll be sending top officials there from China to Trump's inauguration. It'll be interesting to watch it play out. Well, we do appreciate you for being with us here on this Friday evening. Brian Sobel, he's a political analyst, helping us to break down the very latest as we look ahead to Donald Trump's inauguration on January 20th.
Take care, Christina. Have a wonderful weekend.
You too. And so we do want to show you one more time a live look that we have there at the White House. As you can see, we're talking about those frigid temperatures. This shot has changed a lot over the last few hours. In fact, just remember yesterday we were seeing snow there in Washington, D.C. So it'll be interesting to see how everything plays out there in the capital city. Also want to show you this live look that we have there of the rotunda as well. That will be the site that we have our eyes on. But thanks for being with us here on Live Now from Fox. We are going to take this opportunity to step away for a 2-minute break.